Recording. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Collective Intelligence Block Party number 12. And we've just been chatting it up a little bit. And it just felt like a good time to record because we're talking about the fundamentals. Miles, you just said, it all boils down to truth, right? Are we willing to, deal with the truth, deal with reality? I would say it boils down to that and to our willingness to come together and do this together, right? Because here's a fundamental thing, right? If you think about our ancestors, and it's kind of mind-boggling that, even, a few tens of thousands of years ago, we were 1/1000th the population that we are today. Mentally I can handle like, okay, there's 10 times more people in Seattle than there were when my great grandmother was born or whatever. Okay. Or grandma. Okay. 10x I can handle. 1,000x? Let's face it. We're on another planet. Let's face it. This is not the planet of our ancestors, right?
And that's why we have to face up to that reality. It's just, we cannot think that the planet is large anymore. It's a small ship for 7-8 billion people. It was a big ship when you had 1,000 times less, So you're right. We have to work together. It's not the same planet. And we can't act as if it is. We've got to change our thinking and the way we manage things. It's perfectly sustainable. But as we said, diet is the industry of diet, I think, is the biggest industry. It makes banks look small. It makes oil, gas, and coal look small because what we are putting in our mouths is a huge quantity of food. And if we think that we can continue to feed ourselves 76 billion cows, pigs, chickens, sheep every year, and that our bodies, first of all, can tolerate that type of bad food because it is unhealthy, but also that the pollution and the fuel and the deforestation that's required to feed all those 76 billion domesticated animals. If we think we can continue with that kind of a diet, we are going to very quickly end up in a disaster. So the banks and the oil and gas and coal industries, in a sense, are invested in our diet industry because that is what drives them too. So it's a paradigm shift that we need. And unless we focus on the ultimate root cause, which is diet, the diet industry, we won't solve the problem. And we're being diverted because I would say that those that are invested in keeping it business as usual are very shrewd, and they're thinking, oh, let's just convince people that they need to build windmills. Let's convince people they need to build solar panels. Let's convince people they need to ride a bicycle to work. Let's convince people that they need a battery-powered car. And all that is like, oh, look over there, squirrel. And everybody's, oh, squirrel. And we're all focused on those trivial things. And meanwhile, it's business as usual over here.
So I definitely agree with you that animal agriculture is the single biggest vector of planetary destruction. No question. Now, as to the root causes of our problems, my feeling and thought is that it's deeper than our desire to eat meat or our taste for meat and dairy, which we know we can get over and and shift. I think I believe that the fundamental root problem is that we're not working as a whole. And
we're not truthful. We're not truthful with each other, right?
We're not truthful.
And what is the reality? And to understand the reality, you are going to tell us, what do we need?
I think the root problem here is communication. The way the communication has been set up now, it's not to our full. We're not using it to our full advantage, and I think that's the biggest thing. Now, I mean, I think that we have to be careful not to paint the biggest problem or the biggest project. Okay, we're gonna do okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna build this to solve this big problem, and that's our objective, right? So it's being put out there, but just the fact that you're putting something enormous out there like that, it scares people away to talk about it. They'll say, "Geez, you're trying to solve that problem. It's too big. It's too, we can't do that." People are kind of like, they give up before you're even past on first base. And so I think our job is to try to figure out how to communicate smaller jobs, smaller things that we need to do, okay, to arrive at that final goal, where these bigger, huge problems will be solved. And it's to some degree, we're not saying it right up front that, okay, this is the complete objective, because we don't want to scare people away.
Just quick interjection. The thing is, it's right on the banner of your image there, Collective Intelligence Block Party. That's what we're doing. It's this collective intelligence is to say, everybody, the narrative that we've had that, meat and dairy and eggs are good for us. Sadly, that's not the case. Sorry to burst the bubble, but that's the collective intelligence and this block party is to say, the reality is now this. And we're here saying, like, I've determined I'm not going to impose anything on anybody. I'm not going to coerce or try to, use any kind of tactics of manipulation, because if people want to eat meat, dairy, and eggs, well, your will, it's your will, your choice. I'm not going to impose on that, but just be aware. This is the collective intelligence is pointing. If we really stop and think, it's actually telling us there's an alternative.
But we have to develop the tools to be able to cope with the ways and means of accomplishing the result that we want, and what tools are these, and how do we build these tools? How do we get it activated? There's a whole number of things that need to be done and created as a collective intelligence to get these things done in a way that's not going to paralyze everybody into into that attitude where they believe, oh, that can't be done.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're doing here, little by little. There's all these sharings have happened. Like a year ago, I met Dr. Rao on this very channel, this very block party concept, and I had no idea that it was possible to just live a life without meat, dairy, and eggs and be perfectly healthy and happy. In fact, be healthier and happier, and that you can have just absolutely delicious meals. And you just mentioned how you saw that the farmers they're killing the cows, pigs, and chickens because the market has collapsed because, well, essentially they're above the law when it comes to social distancing. And the poor people that work in these slaughterhouses and chicken barns are getting infected with the Dos Equis beer crisis.
Dos Equis.
Dos Equis, sorry. And so this is why they have all these cows, pigs, and chickens they don't know what to do with, and they're actually mass burying them, burials. And you mentioned about whole bunches of potatoes that people don't know what to do with because so many people eat their French fries in the restaurants, they've got surplus potatoes. So it's like, wow, you can have such fantastic meals with potatoes. And in fact, you should, if you're vegan, you need to eat a lot of starch and potatoes and rice and beans and corn. And I'm telling you, I don't miss ham or bacon or chicken. I'm perfectly happy with some of the dishes that I make. So anyway, these are the tools that you're talking about, Emery, and they're not that difficult. In fact, I'm just thinking I'm going to make myself a vegan breakfast right now. Healthy oatmeal and some what have I put on it? Chia seeds, or you can grind those up, and flax seeds, little brown sugar or maple syrup, and oat milk. I don't even come near me with regular milk. I can't even handle it anymore. My stomach actually gets very upset. I discovered that actually about 20 years ago. I was popping Tums left and right, Rolaids and Tums.
You could use
coconut
milk.
Turns out I can't. Yeah, coconut milk's good too. I just like this oat milk. And there's almond milk, there's soy milk, there's lots of great alternatives. And then put in front of me a fudgicle made out of coconut milk versus a fudgicle made out of ice cream, no problem. The coconut ice cream is better to me. So yeah, I think the thing is, it's like, wow, people, you could just actually change everything on a dime. You just stop. Like, again, I'm not saying anybody has to. If you're going to buy a package of bacon, at least know how that pig was treated. Be aware. Don't allow this truth to be covered up. So I'm just going to turn my camera off as I go make my coffee. I'll still be listening.
Very good. Very good. Awesome. Thanks, Miles. Good to know. Good to know you're here listening, and feel free to chime in anytime. I think some really important truths are being uncovered in this conversation, or clarified. And if I had to sum up what I saw as the gap between where we are and where we need to be in order to survive, the gap is really, for me, it boils down to a gap of humanity has not yet figured out how to come together and come to agreement as to how we're going to live or manage our affairs here on planet Earth. In fact, I mean, the concept seems so foreign to us. I would posit, not to us here on the Block Party, because we're really steeped in this possibility of humanity coming together. But if you think about where we came from, we were all these different tribes who basically just said, look, we're doing our thing over here. You go ahead and do your thing over there. That's fine. Here's the boundary, whether it's defined by this mountain range or this edge of the valley or watershed or whatever. But, here's the boundary. Don't mess with us and we won't mess with you. And so out of that, we kind of developed this culture of isolation, and we do what the heck we want, speaking as a group, right? A tribe, a group isolated from other tribes and doing whatever the heck they want. So we've gotten lulled into this default that as long as me and mine are okay, I really don't care what's on the other side of those hills over there. They can do whatever the hell they want, right? I mean, only if they're messing with us, then I care. And, we may need to go to war with them. We may need to whatever. But as long as there's no conflict in terms of territory or resources or whatever, they do what they want. We do what we want. Now, we may all choose to go vegan for whatever reasons that make sense within our locale, but we're not going to try to spread that around the world. But now in 2020, and for the last several decades, even centuries, it's become crystal clear that there's way more people than, not that the planet can take, but there's way more people that now precludes us from just taking this isolationist approach to the world. And therein you get world wars, United Nations, treaties, trade agreements, all this stuff that are kind of, I hesitate even to call them steps in the direction of humanity coming together, because it's not humanity coming together, it's the sociopathic, corrupt governments coming together and saying, all right, each of us individually represents a bunch of rich people, right? The poor, who gives a crap about them, but, we'll say nice things so that we can get reelected, including getting the votes of poor people. But the bottom line of the United Nations, as I see it, is you've got a bunch of these sociopathic, corrupt governments who represent and are there to do the bidding of wealthy sociopaths, each in their own country, right? So now these representatives of these sociopaths come together, and it's basically, all right, how do we carve up the world and have, basically these giant international policies that keep our respective backers, the wealthy sociopaths in each country, how do we keep them happy? All right. That's what it boils down to. So I'm just saying, the United Nations is not about humanity coming together. It's about sociopaths coming together against the rest of humanity, right? For how to collectively exploit and get the most from the rest of humanity, and perhaps prevent the rest of humanity from overpopulating, right? Um, so for me, I almost don't really want to spend too much time talking about root causes, given the nature of our current crisis. And again, I'll use the analogy of a building on fire. When the fire team shows up and it's ablaze and there's kids up in the attic and they might die, and if we don't fix this, here's what's not going to happen. What's not going to happen is the fire chief is not going to come and say, all right, before we do anything here, I need to find out exactly what caused this fire, right? I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to say, how do we put this thing out? Now, in the process of putting it out, if they find out that there's a gas leak or something that's fueling the fire, that's different, right? What's driving it right now, right? And what's driving us right now, with now shifting to the metaphor of planet on fire, what is driving the fire right now? It's really a lot of things, and we've talked about root causes and all that. But then back to the fire chief, what's the objective right now? The objective is put out the fire. And that's a higher priority objective than understanding the root causes, right? The next day, after the fire's out and all that, there's no active fires. Okay, let's sit down and analyze what's causing all these fires, right? And of course, plenty of that's going on here in the world, of gobs of analysis. So I dare say we've got a pretty good grasp on root causes, and where we're not scoring such high marks is on what do we do about it, right? And for me, there's one thing to do at this point, and that is to get humanity together in conversation with each other so that we can come to an agreement about what we're going to do. And
I'll just interject. Well, what
please.
you just said is an ultimate root cause. Just putting it out there. So you do have to talk about ultimate root causes. And there's a Sheldon Woolen, who I've quoted numerous times before, sociologist, recently departed professor of sociology. And he said, passivity is our problem. Is going to be the downfall of civilization. So what you're saying is exactly what he said as an ultimate root cause. How do we get people coming together to put out the fire?
Yeah, and it's the passivity is, fire, that's somebody else's problem. That's the fire department's problem, right? That's not my problem. And so again, the solution, or the meta solution, that which will generate all the solutions that we actually need, is humanity coming together and talking about this with a view to reaching agreement as to what we are actually going to do. If it's stop eating meat, it's stop eating meat. If it's do SRM, it's do SRM. If it's deliver food to everyone, then that. But
can I just interject again?
Yeah,
so
please.
that's why I say don't ever tell anybody they can't have that bacon, because that's not going to get them to come together. You know what I mean? Like, it is, as you said, how do we get people to come together? You know, is what I said the ultimate, you know, the number one vector? Maybe not, you know. So that's why I can't, like, my conviction is that it is. But I'm not going to say, oh, you can't eat that bacon, or I'm going to, you know, do something to you. Because I want, as you said, we need to come together.
Yeah, and that's the key. Coming together is the key. But here's the thing. Consider that humanity has really no precedent for humanity truly coming together. Again, we have the United Nations as a precedent, and I articulated a view on that, that that's not about humanity coming together. So this is a fundamental point that I think we just need to acknowledge and then move forward in that acknowledgement. But the acknowledgement is that we've never come together as humanity. We haven't.
Yeah, and that's very true, because look at the map of the planet. In fact, if you look at, there's on YouTube, there's a video that shows you how the borders have changed in the last 2,000 years in Europe, just looking at Europe.
Yeah.
It is crazy how many little countries came and went. Like, you know, after you watch that video, I don't know how anybody can be a historian, because keep all this, you know, tracking it and remembering all this changing history. It's illustrative of what you just said. We've never come together before in history.
Yeah, so I think we just, number one, we need to acknowledge that, right? I mean, just to make a simple Sunday morning cartoon of it, you know, it's 1960, 1961, President Kennedy is newly minted, and he says, all right, let's go to the moon. First step, let's review all the previous expeditions to the moon and see which of those work best and maybe copy those. Seems sensible, right? Oh, Mr. President, one important fact. Humanity's never gone to the moon before. Oh, really? This is a first? Well, that's exciting. All right, let me make a speech about that. So by analogy, here we are in 2020, 50 years, 60 years later, and it's, you know, acknowledging we've never come together before. Well, that's exciting. You could go to two places with that. One is, well, if we've never come together before, then we never will come together, and it's all moot. So let me just keep on doing my thing in isolation. Or, wow, we've never come together before. So that's a challenge. How might we come together, right? And that's what we're addressing right here on the Block Party. And that's what a bunch of groups are addressing. And that's where I'd like to go next, whenever we're ready in the conversation, is how to build off of these small beginnings in order to achieve ultimately this big coming together, right? And I wrote about this in the email that I sent out last night. Below the agenda is this summary strategy. I'll cover it now. It's not very well written. No, it's okay, but it's just to cut to the chase. We have these little pockets that are forming, all right? Block Party Solution Club. This is, you know, a little pocket. Several hundred people total. We may be up over 1,000 now in terms of total number of people who've ever come to any, but it's somewhere in the hundreds or 1,000 or so. So it's small, definitely in absolute terms, very, very small. And Other communities are substantially bigger, like Rebel Wisdom. But even in absolute terms, Rebel Wisdom is small, right? And then you have these other groups that we keep finding more and more about and dabbling in, and they dabble in us and we dabble in them, like Ben Roberts Network, Now What, etc. There's John Raymer's Sign Network. He'll be on here at 11, if not before, Pacific time. You got Silish's network and Collective Intelligence, Vegan World 2026. And then you have these other groups that are even smaller than us. Cesare is starting his thing. And Denise Aurora has done some meetings and is just starting to kind of create her little community. Brett Warshawski, God bless him, has organized some meetings. And so, just like in the world of business, you've got some giant corporations, and then this exponential, you've got this long tail of, ever smaller entities. So the way I'm seeing it is there's this ecosystem of groups, of collections, that's not even an ecosystem yet, in the sense that they're just kind of isolated groups. And the thing is, this sort of mirrors human tribalism in a way, is that we all gravitate towards our micro tribe, right? Look, you guys didn't get up this morning and say, yeah, that block party's kind of fun, but let me check out some other stuff. I think it's time for me to, look, we all do that in our lives, but there's an inertia to hanging with the group that we're used to hanging with, right? It's kind of what we do as humans. And so acknowledging all of that, the kind of big picture strategy that I'm proposing for how to come together is step one, keep doing what you're doing. In other words, step one, let's all, continue coming to those communities that we're developing and being a part of. Because for me, that's the foundation of whatever we build. So the good news today is that the foundation is growing. There's lots and lots of communities, and more growing, more forming every day. And the big opportunity then is for how do we, the next stage of this evolution that I see is how do we get these communities just to come together, right? And the simplest way occurs to me to do this is, number one, talk about it. Talk about the fact that humanity has never come together and that we need to come together. Talk about the fact that these proto groups and communities are forming here or there. And talk about the idea of these different groups coming together and forming, for lack of a better word, a federation, right? Now, when Europe became the European Union and shifted to the euro and all that, what they didn't do was dissolve nations, dissolve individual nations. The Kingdom of Spain no longer exists. Kingdom of France no longer, that's what they didn't do. What they did do was say, look, Spain is still Spain, France is still France, and let's agree to come together in specific ways, right? And have a greater sense of unity and economic interdependence and, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I think a similar thing needs to happen now in terms of a federation of, I just used the simple metaphor CIC, CIC, right? Community, collective intelligence community. We're a CIC, we're a collective intelligence community. We're a community, we come together to manifest collective intelligence, to share ideas and grow and all this good stuff. We need a community where all the CICs, we need a federation of CICs And it could be a very loose federation. It doesn't have to mean, anything about giving up autonomy or identity, or now we suddenly have to, sign up to some mission that we didn't even author. Nothing like that. To be a member of the Federation is initially, as I see it, it could simply be an association, right? I could belong to some golfing association, and it would not affect the rest of my life in one iota, right? I don't even have to play golf. I don't even have to like golf, and I can be a member of a golfing association. Why not? Now, certain associations require radical changes and intense commitments and all that. Like if you join the military, right? If I were to sign up for the Army as an infantryman or something like that, I would lose, basically my own rights to myself. I become, an integral part of this much bigger thing. So what I'm talking about with federation of KICs, collective intelligence communities, it's just, we just come together and talk with each other, but with no real big obligations. And then we have a voluntary participation in certain community things, like a calendar, a federation calendar that shows all the public meetings that you can join, put on by any particular KIC. How cool would that be?
Yeah, this is very cool. But I see it like this, Miles. I see it like the people, they need to define themselves, within this federation. You'll have thousands and thousands, eventually millions of people, okay, within the federation, okay, and every individual is defined. So you, as part of the federation, can go and do a search for any given number of people who fit a certain criteria, okay, of what you're looking for and what you want to connect with. So you're going to bring that like to some degree like a Google search, where you're putting in your filter for what you're looking for, and you're searching for people, okay? Because you don't know who these people are, but you want to be able to designate those that are found within the system, within the search. You want to be able to put them into your grouping for any given task that you develop, right? So people will have to be willing to give up, or not necessarily give up, but to offer, data so that this system of search could work efficiently.
Now, can I interject for one quick second there, Emery?
Yeah.
Okay. I totally hear what you're saying. That's one possible, part of the pathways, people giving up data. But consider even an even lesser commitment where individuals are not asked to give up any data whatsoever to the Federation or to anyone, right? Imagine that, to be a part of the Block Party, I know your name is Emery and all that. You put your name on your thing. I put my name on mine. Miles does on his. But, there are people who are on here who never show their face. And we have no idea if the first name is what they represent it to be. It could just be a pseudonym, whatever, and that's totally fine. So now imagine these different collective intelligence communities, when they come together as part of a federation, like I might represent, Radish, Block Party, Solution Club, let's just call it Radish, the Radish community. I might represent the Radish community at the Federation. And if the Federation asks, hey, give me a list of your members, I'd say no, right? Now imagine that we just came together and we said, look, this is not about anyone giving up any information or any data. Let's simply agree that all the public meetings that we organize and put up on Facebook and our website and all that, that anyone has access to anyway, we simply agree on kind of a protocol, a format, a way for us to all aggregate these different calendar entries, events together, so that everyone in the Federation, all members of all communities that join the Federation, all those member communities have full visibility to all the meetings that are happening. Now, granted, what you're saying is absolutely correct, Emery. If people gave up more personal information, then people in the Federation would be able to find other people much more easily. But let's take that as sort of a subsequent kind of an actually optional step, right?
Yeah. Well, if you want to get things done, right? If you have certain projects that require certain abilities, right? Well, it would be very convenient, very helpful to know that, well, this individual has this ability and has made it clear that they are willing to participate in this kind of position where they can offer their service, their time and energy into providing that which is what is needed for any given project. Okay, and so they know, what's going to happen further down the line once you get involved, right? I mean, right from the get-go, you're aware of that. So you do get involved with that in mind, and you leave this information there to be helpful for future positive results. That's what you're looking for. You want the system to work. You want it to be successful. So obviously, I think people who are going to eventually participate in that, knowing full well that this is going to happen, they're going to be more than willing to say, well, yeah, I'm a designer in this and that. I'm a virologist. I'm an engineer in this very focused line of work. So and then the people on the other end who are creating the solutions or developing a certain project, okay, they'll be able to get these people together. Okay, I need this, this, and this. It's like a recipe. You're going to need so many ingredients, and for each ingredient, you're going to have a number of options. You're going to have like hundreds of possibilities to look at. So you're not going to be limited because there'll be a lot of people who are participating. But the participants know what's at stake, and I think we have to point that out right from the get-go, right from the beginning. I mean, we're doing that to a large extent anyway, but if we want to get things done, right, and to break off into different rooms of Zoom rooms to discuss what we're going to do or what's going to be done in realistic terms and now in reality, not virtual.
Emery, yeah, I really am resonating with what you said and what Jamin has said. A couple of things I'd like to add in. Jamin's point about we like to come back to our little tribes, our little gatherings of friends, right? Where we feel comfortable and safe. And just to share a quick experience there, one of the issues is that we can lose very quickly what we have. We can kill what we love if it gets too big. So case in point, I joined in on this Rebel Wisdom. It was a call-in Zoom call, everybody welcome. Well, before you know it, like when I got on, it was, I don't know, 500 participants. And then I think it went to 800 and it was on for 8 hours. It was just this past Saturday or Sunday, I guess. But I might as well have been in the Calgary Saddle Dome, you know, because you're just another one of, like, the host, David Fuller. Apparently he had multiple screens so they could try to see everybody, but he's like, it's as if he's on a stage in front of 1,000 people, you know. So anyway, what I'm getting at is the intimacy and feeling connected. I don't know what the magic number is, but even on the block party, you know, when we get into the divine feminine, or when Dr. Rao and others are joining in, there's going to be potentially 20 people or more all at once. And then as each person comes on, every individual feels a little less connected, right? A little less, as a little less influence, So yeah, that's something to think about. So Jamin's concept of encouraging all these groups, but at some point trying to bridge them all, and so, but still have people feel they're part of a community. That's the balance. And I think that's the brilliance of the block party concept for me, is because, and I'll say it again, I feel very comfortable joining here because it's a party where we are not yet, nobody's intending for us now to all of a sudden, okay, we're going to constitute a charter, an enterprise, and we're going to start building mirrors, you know, like right now today. And you know, Miles, you're going to be in charge of acquiring the glass, and Emery, you're going to be in charge of the silver film. You know, we're not here. We're just here as a block party, have some fun, chit chat, have coffee, martinis later. And I feel comfortable inviting people. I've invited 2 people today. Hopefully they'll show up. And the reason I feel invited and comfortable is I said, you don't have to join anything. You don't have to be a member of Radish. And in fact, I'm not ready to be a member of almost anything because I'm still grappling with governance in my own location. And until I feel comfortable about, you know, even where I live, I'm not comfortable in necessarily jumping on board anybody else's bandwagon somewhere else. And, you know, in fact, at some point very soon, I hope to be able to share more on that idea. And it would actually, I'd really want to connect with you, Emery, because I'm talking about a Canadian context and governance in Canada. It's of interest to you, I think, if I start sharing this. But Jamie's going to go, well, I really, you know, I'm not, it doesn't really affect me. It's kind of nice to listen, but it's not a priority for me, right? But anyway, those are just a few thoughts, I guess, just in summary. You are potentially going to be the victim of your own success because you get too big and people don't feel like they're part of a intimate sharing. But yet we do want to connect people of the same sentiments. So the bots idea, having some bots to connect people up that Jamin's talking about, you know, that'd be great. Everybody could know, well, Miles is thinking of these things. interested in these ideas. And then from there, you know, after the block party, then people can go into the solution club, you know, so people who want to join in and get busy with Radish and such, there's the solution club on Wednesdays. And, you know, go for it if you're ready to move into that solutions. But today it's a block party. Everybody's just coming from all over the world sharing. And that's what Jamin's trying to get to, is the ultimate thing is getting people to come together.
Yeah, I think people are going to, you know, and also, you know, as we progress, people will start taking more of an initiative. People will take the initiative to begin some work, you know, on any given you know, problem or any things that we are talking about. You know, you could take the initiative and organize and have those discussions, those conversations with people that you've found, that you've experienced, you've had experience with, or you know, you've connected with. So you know, I'm looking to see that in the future. I think a lot more initiative is going to blossom out of what's being done here, and you know, in different you know, like in the Solution Club, and what other people have already done, like Brett, for example, you know, Denise, they've done they've taken the initiative to do to get people going on other things, you know, and at some point we'll be enlightened to find out what the progress is on those you know, those initiatives. So
Yeah, so these are all really good thoughts. And I want to get back to the concept of federation. So just imagine these different communities, I'll just call them communities, collective intelligence communities. Representatives from each community comes together and they say, you know what, wow, you know, each of us is doing cool stuff with our respective communities. And, you know, this notion is starting to bubble up that if we come together, we can do even more. I mean, for me, that's just screamingly obvious. It's the obvious next stage of evolution of collective intelligence is for these communities to come together as some form of federation, right? It could be very loose for starters. And in fact, you know, we could literally start with one simple scenario. Each of you member communities post your meetings on the community calendar, the federation calendar. That's a simple first step. Now, what you
bring it to the block party, the little, you know, promotional. You can have a PSA, public service announcement, here on the block party to go with your calendar entry.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, the bigger picture is that, you know, I, in representation of the Radish community, would post all the block party meetings, Solution Club meetings, and any other meetings that we're doing within this community. Ben Roberts and his community would do the same thing. They would post to the calendar. So would John Raymer and the Sign Network. So would Brett Warchowski, Denise, Cesari, et cetera, all the way up to bigger ones like Rebel Wisdom, you know, whoever, XR, go for it, please.
They would also be, it'd be wise for them to emulate your block party concept. They should all each have their own block party offering kind of like in Calgary, we have the Calgary Stampede, and every company hosts a pancake breakfast. And, you know, in many cases, it's open to anybody. Anybody coming in off the street here will make you pancakes and serve you coffee. And it's a block party during Stampede. Every business has one. And it allows people to, like, one of the best ones I went to was at a funeral home, you know, and who knows, if I need a funeral home, I might go there because they will add, you know, coffee, and I'm not going to go into all the non-vegan food they have, but they have a lot of that too. Anyway, yeah, the block party idea is just a terrific one.
Thank you, Miles. Yeah. And because in fact, in a way, the block party, I'm really glad that you mentioned Stampede, because I hadn't heard of it before, but it sounds like it's a citywide sort of like open house, like, you know, a Calgary style Mardi Gras. You know, maybe we don't tear off our tops in Calgary, but, you know, we come together and have pancakes and coffee and get to know each other, right? So the term open house is what comes to mind. Hey, we're open, welcome. It generates all kinds of warm feeling, because if you had walked up to one of those businesses on a Monday morning and knocked the door, they might say, who the hell are you and what's your business here? But if it's block party time, then it's like we all just shift into this different modality, and it's not about what can I get from you and you're taking up my time, and, you know, no, it's just, hey, come on in, brother. You want some pancakes, some coffee? Yeah, my name's Jamin. Good to meet you. You know, it's just like this, it's like this jubilee, right? Coming together. So anyway, so I agree with you. It would be super cool if all the different communities could agree that, you know what, let's just say Friday is the day for open house, right? Let's face it, Friday is kind of the universal day around the world when everyone kind of by default feels good about what day of the week it is, right? You know, Sunday you're kind of bummed because the weekend is wrapping up and, you know, it's back to whatever Monday morning reality. But Friday, it doesn't get any better than Friday, right? And in fact, part of my thinking about the block party, you know, going back to the very beginning, was that it sort of be this big, not so much a radish-centric thing, but literally like a block. See, a block party is not a party at Jamin's house. It's a party on the entire block of which Jamin's house is a part, right? So the original concept of a block party was not that it be radish-centric, even though it's essentially become that. But the original idea was that it become essentially this open source collective intelligence party. But of course, every party has to have an organizer, right? Or a committee that's organizing it. In this case, you know, I'm the kind of the constant common denominator. You know, to a lesser extent, it's Nolan, so Jamin and Nolan. But, you know, Nolan's kind of going through his own stuff right now, and that's cool. So, you know, he's not here 24 hours a day like he used to be. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is that, and this is what's gotten me thinking in terms of a federation, because with the original intent of the block party, let's face it, it was unrealistic. Why? Because what I'm really finding is that each community really has inertia within its own community, right? People want to keep on hanging with their tribe. Now, go a little bit deeper and you see, you know, some communities form and then they sort of disband, or they just kind of get tired and, you know, next thing you know, they're not meeting anymore, right? So communities can come and go. But the point is that at any given moment, there are a number of active communities that have inertia at that moment, right? And they tend to stay where they are. So, but I love this idea of the stampede, right? Kind of a citywide stampede. In this case, it would be more like a collective intelligence-wide stampede, you know. where all the different communities that are practicing some form of collective intelligence or another all agree to have an open house. Now, that would obviously be an opt-in, right? Obviously, the city of Calgary doesn't make it a law that you must open and serve pancakes. No, it's totally opt-in. But obviously, the businesses that participate win, and the ones who don't lose. It's like, why are you shut today? You're just not into the community thing, right? That's kind of the message, right?
Yeah, and they're just for your information, it's a 10-day festival, like you said, sort of a Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
But it's Stampede, and it's it's not very vegan friendly because it's all about cowboys and there's a rodeo, and there's a big fairgrounds, and for 10 days you ride, and there's beer gardens, but a big part of it is you do not have to, you probably can come to the city of Calgary and not have to buy yourself one meal. You conceivably could find a Stampede breakfast or a Stampede lunch somewhere and get enough calories that you wouldn't even have to pay for a meal, because it is, as you said, it's an open house. So yeah, this block party could convert into a Stampede, especially creating a theme, party atmosphere, and different features, entertainment, bring it all together, in the big collective intelligence Stampede festival. People playing guitars, people who can't sing, and whatever.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So if we could get a Stampede-like situation going on, where let's just say hypothetically, every Friday, every collective intelligence community had an open house. Some of them might only just do it for a couple hours. Others might do it for 6 hours, others for 12 hours, others for a full 24, whatever. But, the point is, we would have that Stampede-like thing. And the net effect of that is you meet a whole bunch of people, right, who you otherwise wouldn't have met. You get to know a whole bunch of businesses that you otherwise wouldn't have set foot in, right? Because again, the dynamics I talked about, the normal business dynamics are a certain way. And if you feel like you don't fit into that because you're not ready to buy a car, or you're not ready to die and therefore become a customer of the mortuary or whatever, right? But, but you do want to get...
people, these companies, they always have their, what do you call it, bling.
Oh, sure.
There's a name for that.
Yeah, bling. Bling.
Bling. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
People have fun, and businesses get to promote themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, that was exactly the original spirit of the block party, and I think we maintained that spirit pretty well. But the reality that I'm coming to see is that one block party is not enough, right? That we really need a federation. And when we first come together to federate, we first need to talk with each other as, leaders and representatives of these diverse communities. We need to come together and say, hey, what are we federating for, right? And like I said, for me, it's obvious. Federation is the next stage of evolution of collective superintelligence. Right now, we're squarely in the middle of this first phase, which is just communities just coming together and talking with each other, and talking, getting to know each other and all that. And that takes time, right?
And how very important it is for the people that are like there's a lot of people with this Dos Equis situation waking up to well, obviously there's something wrong. Why are we all basically being sequestered in our homes, and the whole world is virtually turned upside down? And there are businesses that are suffering, and if we get even restaurant owners to come to the block party. And even if it's a restaurant that's serving barbecue right now, come to the block party. Maybe you just need to consider some alternatives, and you'll meet some interesting people at the block party. But what I guess in summary, what I'm saying is it's time for people to wake up to the reality. So we need this federation that you're talking about. We need to have, like in Calgary, there's a Calgary Stampede board, kind of like a federation that oversees the whole 10 days and, make sure that there's a core event, right? There's a core event where we have the rides coming to town. We have the cowboys and the rodeo coming to town. You have the entertainers, it's usually a week where there's some big name entertainers. But anyway, bottom line is there is a federation that gets together to oversee the overall idea. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, again, I'm really glad you brought it up as an example because it's very tangible. And also the federation, here's what those businesses don't do when they federate. They don't say, oh, okay, we're all going to pool all of our money and all of our ownership, and we're just going to kind of create this one big entity that we're all going to work for. And, we all lose our autonomy. No, that's what they don't do. What they do is they say, hi, I'm Bob's Boxes. I make the best boxes in all of Calgary, and I'm here. And yes, I'm game to play with the Stampede, but when the Stampede's over, I go back to my business as usual. And, so it's very limited. It's a limited form of cooperation. You're not giving up a hell of a lot of autonomy, right? In fact, it's completely opt-in, right? I could imagine someone joining the Federation in Calgary and saying, great, love it all, this is all great. I'm not going to participate this year. I'll probably participate next year. So you're not even forced to do anything other than join an association for fundamentally conversation, right? And eventually something will be voted on. Great. And you see, that's when we need, rules of order and, whatever else. But even before we get to the stage of discussing rules of order and all that, even before that, imagine that we simply carved out some time and said, we're going to talk about federation, right? And I'm sure before there was a Stampede, someone had an idea and they met for breakfast with a couple other business owners and said, hey, da-da-da-da-da, and, I'm friends with the mayor. And next week, let's meet with the mayor. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, da-da-da. We all have this idea and we want to do this. So it all starts with conversation.
That's exactly how it started over 100 years ago. Some farmers and ranchers, there's like the famous, I don't know, they call them the famous five. That's another famous five we have here. But there were some guys, some ranchers that said, we got to maybe do something for the community.
Hey, how about looking at it like a carnival? Look at it like a carnival.
Yeah.
Instead of like federation. I mean, I understand the word, but I understand the word, but it's sort of gov type of flavor to federation.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good point, Emery. Let's keep humor in this and levity.
Because carnival, when you say carnival, it's more like celebration of some sorts. Like we're celebrating, the fact that we're gonna be saving life on the planet. It's worth organizing a festival for that, something.
Yeah. So it could be like a carnival, but I'm just going to keep using the word federation, at least for the moment. Speaking for myself, use whatever words you want, of course, but because in my mind, it's not just, a once a year sort of carnival or Stampede like event. It is something intended to be an ongoing, really a coming together, not just for 10 days out of the year, but for 365 days out of the year, that we're, you know, we're sharing our events. So this is kind of an ongoing thing. And then beyond that basic minimum, you know, level of participation, which is share your events on the public calendar, right? And of course, you know, promote the Federation calendar within your own community, right? You know, that's just, let's just say that's the basic table stakes. Now, in addition to that, we could create a Federation membership directory, right? That's totally opt-in. If you want to, you know, sign up and put information about yourself and your skills and your passions and whatever else, so that others can invite you to their meetings, go for it, right? But that would be totally
just a quick addition. There's actually a pancake or a flapjack finder, a website, if you come to Calgary, and you can actually just go online and it'll tell you on any of the 10 days where you can go for a free breakfast or a free lunch. And so that's sort of what you're talking about. You got the calendar to find these block parties.
Yeah, or just conversations, right? It could be a very focused meeting just on permaculture and not a party at all. It could be like, hey, this is a conversation and we have rules of order and whatever. Great, you know, go for it. So, but yeah, but same basic idea, this flapjack app, Flap Finder or whatever, right? So, but for me, that's the basic, you know, is just a shared calendar so that we can go to each other's meetings and all that. The next level up, totally opt-in, is this membership directory. And then other opt-in stuff. Imagine a committee of different members of the Federation got together and started working on a centralized database of the recordings and transcripts and participation in all the meetings that choose to be part of the database, right? You want your database in this meeting, in this meetings database? Opt in. You don't? Opt out, right? And so I see the Federation as the cradle of collective superintelligence. I'll say it again, but first let me welcome Uncle Frank. How you doing there, Uncle Frank? I see you're here on the screen, but your video's off. Anyway, just want to welcome you. Feel free to say hello anytime. All right. And actually, Uncle Frank asked me yesterday not to call him Uncle Frank on these meetings, but just Frank. So I told him I might have a hard time with that. So anyway, but at least wanted to acknowledge that. So again, I see the Federation as the cradle of collective superintelligence, right? Remember how, like, in history, we learned that, you know, the Fertile Crescent was the cradle of civilization, right? Because that's where they first started doing basically farming at scale and the storing of grain, right? Likewise, I see this Federation as the cradle of collective superintelligence. I mean, and here's the thing, Stampede is another great example, right? It was not a foregone conclusion that Stampede was going to be a success. They said, hey, let's try it, right? But those who tried it and got into it in the early years when it was still, you know, a small, pretty rural, agricultural kind of thing, I assume, you know, Calgary, like most cities, started out as a little intersection, First and Main, and it was just surrounded by farms. And then, you know, the urbanization, the dwellings, the businesses, and all that grew and grew and grew. And, you know, the rest is history. So when it first started out small, but it was because there was a virtuous cycle. Businesses, ranchers, etc., found that they got more benefit than what they had to ante up to participate. And that's actually, that's a very general trend in consolidation generally. Emery's put the words up in the chat: conglomerate, amalgamation, etc. And so in biology, the trend in evolutionary biology has been towards larger, more complex organisms, whereas before, like in the primordial soup, you had just kind of different single cell organisms doing their thing. And in the Cambrian explosion, these individual cells found out that they could, if they came together, they had benefit. But again, it's not obvious that they would benefit from that, because there's a cost associated with coordination and centralization of anything, right? And then there's benefits, right? And, you know, that's the story with civilization as well, right? There's a cost associated with being part of a city, a member of a city, a member of a state, a member of a country. You got Forrest Brown joining the room. But then there's benefits, right? You know, if somebody's trying to kick down your door at 2 a.m., you call the police, right? And they come. That's one of the benefits of being a part of a bigger whole. Yeah, Emery, go ahead. Okay.
I was just going to add, with respect to just backtracking a bit, not to lose what you were just saying, about, you know, costs and benefits of getting too big or coming together. But with respect to creating the calendar, yeah, is there anybody in the world, anywhere right now, having a collective calendar dedicated to saving life on Earth? Okay, so because there are calendar scheduling tools, and I haven't even investigated it, but there's something called Bingo Schedule. The school that my son goes to uses it to schedule volunteers to show up for fundraising events. Doesn't have to be a bingo. So, and then, you know, you put your name in on any given calendar date to any given event. So the tool is there, and, you know, it's just one that I'm familiar with. God knows how many there are. But as you are, you know, talking, it's like, well, is anybody anywhere on the planet using one of these things to actually save life on Earth?
Yeah, I think the answer is either no, or if they're doing it, very few people know about it. And that gets back to this fundamental point that we've never come together yet. We're just starting to do it in these proto communities that are forming here and there. And now that a lot of these communities are starting to talk about similar things, like collective intelligence, like the overall urgency, exponential planetary overheating, possible solutions, this and that. You know, the bottom line that we all agree to is that the way that we're collectively managing our affairs here on the planet is utterly atrocious, and we're in a death spiral, and we all might go extinct. So I mean, it's just like, whoa. But you know, the people who watch Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, etc., they're basically clueless, because that narrative is all about business as usual is a good thing. Keep buying our products. the products and services of our advertisers, and everything will be great. So they're totally clueless. But these different communities were all we all have this common shared understanding that things are really, really bad and they could be way better. So what the heck, let's come together and figure this out. I want to welcome, is it Kushbu? Welcome, Kushbu. And
hello, Kushbu. Oh, this is my friend from India. Oh, her name means happy fragrance. Kushbu, happy fragrance. So now there she is. Hi, Kushbu. This is great.
Oh, Kushbu, you're muted. Your microphone. There you go. Yeah.
Miles, thank you for sending me this. I was just going through this, and then without even checking the timeline and all, I just thought, let me just dial in, and it got connected. So hi.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I told Jamin you might be coming along. So particularly for the Divine Feminine, I wanted her to be here.
Yeah.
Because she can meet Jackie and Myra and Stephanie and so many others. It's a very important section. I think it's the most important segment of the whole 24 hours. Is the 2 hours for the Divine Feminine. So I'm glad you're joining. So I don't know if you've been listening to anything we've said previously on Twitch or anything?
No.
No. So Jamin, I don't know. Let me introduce Kushbu a little bit. And then
well, first let me pause recording. Go ahead, Miles. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Kushbu is part of another group that I'm part of, which is called the Carl Jung Depth Psychology Reading Group, who, Jamin, I've talked about Skip Conover numerous times. And in fact, Skip once popped in briefly, listened in, and also Nancy Paff was a visitor to the block party. And so here's now Kushbu. She's also part of that group. And she lives in India, and she can perhaps explain the city herself. I'm not entirely sure, but she's got a fascinating history, a very compelling story, which is available for people to listen to on the Carl Jung Depth Psychology Reading Group YouTube page. And listen to her story. It's really powerful. And she's just a delightful person. So, she works with children, social work, and she's very interested in psychology and Carl Jung. And I thought, well, this is also going to be of interest to her. So now, Jamin, if you'd like to give in a nutshell, what your collective intelligence block party is, she'd probably appreciate that.
Oh yeah, happy to. I just want to give Kushbu priority if you want to share anything about yourself, or you can wait and I can share first. Either way.
Let me just say, if you want to know about me, just know good things. Just go to that YouTube channel, and you have like all 2 hours for me, like with me. Go ahead about it, no problem. But I think another interest, because it is collective. I'm really, really interested in collective consciousness, collective intelligence. Really, and in fact, I have been. Please pardon. His name is Yoda. And
Yoda, yeah. Well, sounds like Yoda's pretty into the collective intelligence, communication and all that. Yeah, welcome, Yoda.
Well, he want to get out actually, which I'm not allowing. Anyway, so one interesting thing which I've been working on the collective intelligence mess kind of a thing, like online platform to track the social support structure which is being like which is given by the individuals, which is given by different NGOs and other things, like other social welfare institutes in India. Um, but I got fired because of proposing that idea. Like it just bypassed like collective intelligence and consciousness. It just bypassed like my team. I was so helpless. I was not able to explain them at all. So I'm very curious about like collective intelligence and consciousness is a very important aspect. Even Carl Jung mentioned it, like one essay we discussed yesterday. The first line was of that essay that like how world needs this, like world desperately needs collective consciousness. So yeah, it was just the name that triggered me so high that I just tapped on the link there. So kudos to you. Kudos to you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you are so welcome here, Khushbu. I'm so happy you're here. And the Collective Intelligence Block Party happens every Friday, Saturday. We start at 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, which is probably 6:30 or 5:30 in the evening in India. Well, actually, what time is it there where you are now? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Anyway, so we start at 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, Friday morning, and we go a full 24 hours till 6 o'clock in the morning Saturday. I'm here for the full 24 hours, except for 5 hours when I take a little sleep in the middle of the night. But that's about 15 hours into it that I get a 5 hour break. So
Quite an adventure, man. Quite an adventure.
yeah, and we do it every week. So
Mm-hmm.
it's quite a commitment, and
Yeah.
we in so doing we are pioneering certain aspects of collective intelligence, and
Oh.
collective intelligence itself is such a big field that in my mind the ideal is kind of what's happening right now, where you have our group here, other groups over here and here and here and here and here, and obviously there's public Zoom meetings happening all over the place on all different topics. And so I believe that the next phase of evolution, right, in collective intelligence at a planetary scale, is these different communities, all these different communities that are pretty separate from each other. You have some people that go to one and then go to another and then go to another. So those individuals who I call like bumblebees, because they go from flower to flower to flower, they are, probably the strongest connection that we currently have, right? In terms of connecting these different communities together. I'll give you a great example. So the Carl Jung Depth Psychology Group, which I haven't been to any of their meetings. They sound great, but I haven't been to any of those meetings. So the two of you are now two people who have gone both to the Depth Psychology Group and to the Collective Intelligence Block Party. Awesome. So we now have a connection. These two groups have a connection, but it's a human connection, right? So as such, I call these kind of loose connections, right? And I see a huge opportunity in strengthening these connections, building upon them. And so one way that I envision that happening is these different communities come together intentionally to form a federation, right? Now, this could be a federation with very minimal, requirements of participation, right? Just like a simple membership organization. You're a member of that, but it doesn't affect the rest of your life, right? In the case of the federation that we're talking about here, one of the first and most basic scenarios would be that each community that's a part of the federation um, actually posts all of their public events, meetings like this one, on a common calendar. And then that would greatly facilitate people being able to check out different meetings, different communities here and there. And so we strengthen the connections that way. And this also becomes a data connection. There's now a calendar, a common calendar where all these meetings are stored. That's a data connection, as well as.
Wow, it's I'm sorry to interrupt here. It feels like a beautiful, like synchronized event, because just an hour before, while in that in one of a call for welfare workers of the town which I live in, which is Bangalore, which is also known as the Silicon City of India. But they were exactly doing it, and in fact we started putting the map and data for the city, especially for the resource exchange. But we started, like, we gave a name to that sheet today. Like, we started it today, and I'm just very conscious and aware about all those synchronicity. So I just got triggered when you said that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. You know, the synchronicities are amazing. In fact, I'd like to hear more about what you're mentioning there in Bangalore. What is it exactly that's this common thing that's coming together?
So there's one community, they call Janatsu. They are all ex Silicon Valley dropout who came back to India. They didn't find any good thing in the Silicon Valley. They managed the space there, but they came back. They didn't like it. So they are rich people, and they wanted to donate, like they wanted to share the resources, but they were like super confused because different people needs different things.
Yeah.
I reached out to them when I was in the need of few board games. So that is what I have been doing in my individual capacity, that um, I've been trying to collect board games from people where so the teenage children can engage, like little the mind can engage, because for India it's like in a small room there are 5 people staying. It's a very normal scenario. So the violence has increased a lot. So when these people got overwhelmed with the request, they realized that resources, like we have resources. There is no need. India will not have a hunger issue. Like even like one of the news channel explained it. One of the Indian scientists explained it very nicely, that we have enough grain that we can make a bridge from India to moon and back using that grain. Like we have that much. Touch wood. But still, it's not reaching, and people are dying because of not having enough uh, resources, and they are coming out in the group to find resources. So it means that there's no system in between. Few people are doing the work in their isolated capacities. So these few people who are doing work, how to connect them together, so that it, like, at least the government can know, okay, this specific area has nobody who is helping. And yeah, so basically that collating that data, making a space where people can put requests, like we need oil, or we need salt, or we need warm clothes, or like I wanted a board games. It was a weird request, and they were judging me that what this crazy lady is trying to do. uh, but I have my own reasons. So yeah, that's exactly what what we are planning, to have a common space. So if you want to send something to Bangalore, so you can see in that list that what is needed and what they have and what they don't have. So gaps, people can, like, collectively we can identify gaps to be able to, like, like participate in a real way with the real information, not the third party, fourth party information. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And gotcha. So yeah, the synchronicity is amazing. I mean, it's just becoming, here I have, I was brainstorming about this idea yesterday about federation. We need to create, to all come together. And now I wake up this morning and it's happening in Bangalore, and it's happening here, and it's happening there. So
I'll just add, Khushbu, prior to you joining, we've had a great conversation, which you will be able to hear because Jamin is recording these, and then they go onto the Radish YouTube channel. So this is block party number 12, and there's all these previous wonderful conversations. A lot of it is talking about just exactly what you're working on in Bangalore, which is how do we change the way we connect with each other so that we are working together and sharing as opposed to competing. It's not to say competition isn't a good idea at times, but our society has gone too much into competition as opposed to sharing. And the thing that we're working on, Jamin is spearheading here, is a collective intelligence that will shift us into more of a sharing economy. And he can talk about all sorts of things that connect to what you brought just now, and such as a caring, compassionate companies, community cafes, where he set up a little company to create community cafes to get good, healthy food to people. And more recently, in the past year, Jamin brought Dr. Sailesh Rao, who is a leading scientist in microelectronics. He's considered a pioneer of the internet, and he's a systems engineer. And he has realized that our diet has to change if we're going to save the world. We have to get more people eating healthy plant-based foods, fruits, nuts, potatoes, and seeds and grains. And that's not only for the health of Mother Earth, but our individual bodies. So this conversation that Jamin's had going now, I've been part of it for, I don't know, maybe 3 years now. It keeps changing as evolving, I guess is the word. And so the synchronicity is very powerful. And yeah, I can see perhaps you being the bridge to the people in Bangalore, and particularly these former Silicon computer coders, because this is what Jamin's specialty is. He worked for 6 years with Microsoft at a high-level senior position, and has an advanced degree in systems optimization, and he's very enthusiastic and energetic. So it's great to have you here too, because you're the same way. I know. Oh, hello. Somebody else just joined.
So there's one thing. So you should check out somebody called Jordan Greenhall. Now he come up with beautiful theories, like things which you were just mentioning. So it can be like rivalry information, or rivalry economy, or non-rivalry economy. So rivalry means like we are rival in front of each other, and if you get something, I might get less. So it's like how do I explain? So yeah, it's like only resource is this cloth, and if I take full, the other party will not have anything. But then there are other other kind of resources. Like if you use more, for an example, Ubuntu, how Ubuntu and DIY community works. Like if it is spread more, the idea is strengthened. So there are like theories being developed on this, and like the way forward. I like well researched, well planned stuff. I don't want to go into like the next world have to like no feeling based things only, because it, even in India, the things that are happening is, how do I explain, it's very short sighted, and this kind of platform is the only option to bring like long term anything, because people who are in crisis, who are managing crisis right now, are very like their actions are very very short sighted, like super short sighted. Yeah. So I get what you mean, and I think it is very very essential, and for sure I will take it forward from here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kushbu. I want to welcome Jorge. Welcome, Jorge. Good to see you. And Kushbu just joined us. We're giving her a little bit of an introduction to what we're doing here. I want to also acknowledge Emery. You had your hand up a little bit ago. So I want to give you an opportunity to share if you like. So just jump in, Emery.
It's okay. You can go on to OSS.
Okay, no problem. So in terms of, let me provide a little introduction to collective intelligence, and feel free to raise your hand and interject at any time, anyone. Okay, we'll make it a conversation. So our vision for how collective intelligence can transform our world and in fact save life on Earth, not just human life, but all life. So many species are going extinct, hundreds every day. And so, the overall trajectory of the planet, considering exponential planetary overheating, the melting of ice, the forest fires, etc., all this heating is probably fairly soon going to cause massive crop failures and famine and all that. And we may no longer be able to build a bridge from the Earth to the moon and back with grain, right? Because we may not have grain to harvest. So we're really on a deadly downward spiral right now. And there are a bunch of things that humanity could do to get us out of this spiral and onto a whole new path towards healing and towards life. And I'll just mention two of those things that are like fundamental, I believe, that we need to do, or we can kiss it all goodbye. One of those things is that humanity as a whole needs to take responsibility for feeding everyone. And because right now, especially right now, with the pandemic and everything, the economy is collapsing, contracting and collapsing, and whole parts of the economy are collapsing, including the food networks, including the financial system. People no longer have the ability to go out, leave their home, work, make money, buy food, and come home. That system is broken. And if we do not take responsibility for feeding everyone and just let this situation continue to downward spiral, we're going to have mass famine, mass starvation, and we're also going to have a lot more violence, war, conflict, rebellion, et cetera, et cetera. as people try to feed themselves and feed their family. So we can avoid all of that if we organize ourselves properly. And that's the key, right? There's plenty of farmland, plenty of agricultural output, a lot of which is currently being just thrown away, buried, plowed under, because those parts of the food network that used to be getting the food to people are broken. So many restaurants have shut down, so whole parts of the food network are just collapsing. And all this food is like literally rotting, being buried while other people are starving. So, and you know, that's not a new situation. We've had food waste and people starving for decades, for centuries, but now it's really getting to a whole new level. And we have a specific strategy for that we've proposed for dealing with that. And we'll be talking about that in great detail in 3 hours, starting at 11 a.m. Pacific time after the Divine Feminine segment. And I'll just mention that. So at 11 a.m., Dr. Silas Rao, Dr. Priya Naik, John Raymer, and myself will be leading a conversation that everyone's welcome to. Please come. And we're going to be talking about what we've been talking about the last couple weeks on this topic, is precisely how to organize that. How do we achieve humanity coming together, organizing ourselves, and reorganizing our food networks, literally at a planetary scale, right? So that we can feed everyone. Once we've fed everyone, and let's just pause for a moment. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning in a world where everyone is fed, right? And you have massive coordinated networks, right? Rivers of trucks and trains delivering grains and produce, etc., to urban centers. And then within those urban centers, you know, there are restaurants that are working, producing high volumes of food that are then getting delivered for free to neighborhoods throughout the city so that everyone gets to eat. It's so simple, right? And yet we have, for the last 10,000 years, humanity has lived in a modality where food is under lock and key. You want to eat? You've got to give me gold coins. No gold coins? No food for you. Oh, your children are starving? Oh, I'm sorry, but I can't help you with that. That's not my job. And then it turns out it's nobody's job until the children starve, right? We are transforming that to a modality where it's everyone's job. It's all of our responsibility to take care of everyone, make sure everyone eats every day. So anyway, we'll be talking about that more. But once we achieve that, then the world, life becomes a whole new ballgame, right? Where essentially all of humanity is suddenly on the same team, right? Before, and even today, you have wealthy people who look at poor people as their enemy. They're people that they're afraid of, right? Because, hey, these poor people want some of the wealth that I've accumulated, and I don't want to give it to them, right? So they're my enemy, right? When we live in a world where everyone's eating, where we're all essentially, you know, virtually at the same table, eating the same food, right? It's a lot harder to see these people as your enemy if you're sitting right across the table from them eating, right? This is universal. I don't care what culture, what country you're from, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, tropical, desert, whatever. When people come together and share food, they get it. Their hearts wake up and they say, you know what, we're not, so yes, Kushbu, go ahead.
So we are getting, I feel, I had a thought when you were talking. earlier also, that instead of community, it feels like we are reviving the tribal values, which was, yeah, yeah. So yeah, we are finally realizing that the modernized way didn't work for us. It didn't work for us, and we already knew what to do. It's just that we valued, um, I don't know, new shit we found too much. Like we just valued it too much than what it deserved, and and we valued it so much that we lost our roots. So we are getting back to those roots. And about the food chain which we were talking about in India suddenly. So I street dogs are very common thing in India, like animals roaming around, cows, dogs, cats, like they're roaming around even in the big cities. It's a very common thing in India, and there are few people who feed them normally. Like I feed few of the street dogs around my area, and people fought with me multiple times, and now I know how to deal with them also. It doesn't bother me. Few people just don't want to share the earth with anybody. If they are allowed, they will just kill me also. I'm very sure about it. But anyways, God is there to protect me. But suddenly when the COVID-19 thing happened, people like us who were almost abused by other people for feeding the dogs, we are like in the second row after these health workers. And even we are given even passes to go out. Like I can go out. I have pass to go out because I feed animals. So before I was abused. Now suddenly, because the COVID thing, everybody who feed dogs, and they're like social consciousness. We we are now respected people in social consciousness, collectively. And it was a sudden immediate change. Like government directly up giving us passes, where to the other people they are doing lathi charge. Like, yeah, how, what is a lathi charge? Lathi, you know lathi, right? Rod, normal rod which police have. Like police in India, police have like big bamboo rods with them, and they
Big sticks.
big sticks, correct. So those big stick people with the big stick came and gave us the authorities. So, and it was shock to me. Like it was real shock to me that what was
So
not
are you
like.
saying they became, the humanity is coming out of the men with the big sticks, and they want you to keep feeding the dogs and the animals? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because earlier other people used to abuse us, like using people with the big sticks. I will call police against you. Exactly, this is the argument. Now legally they can't do it, but still, like police will tell us that why are you bothering, just feed it that side. But I'm like, you were shouting on me, don't you want to do anything? But they don't care about it. But here they came approaching us, gave us passes to get out, gave us contact numbers. If we run out of food, government will provide me food. Government might not provide food for migrant workers, but it will provide me food because I'm an animal feeder in the area. So I don't know how well I can explain this better, but it was like just sudden transformation in the approach of the same thing which I had been doing. It just became positive and heroic act, kind of. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what you are saying is already in the plate. It is brewing slowly. I can smell it. Yeah.
Beautiful, Krishna. Thank you. Jorge has his hand raised. Go ahead, Jorge.
Yeah, it sounds very utopic. It's sounds like it's very hard to achieve, because in order to achieve that, we should do the change individually. We should be control of our ego, because if we don't control our ego, it's going to be really hard to achieve this project. So we should have some tools to work and educate ourselves, because we should develop the consciousness that we are living collectively and with no ego. I mean, we have ego to survive, but we should control that ego, because that's the main problem. The systems, they are always with very good intentions.
Jorge, I just interject to let you know that Khushbu has a dream in India to translate the collective works of Carl Jung, the great psychologist who studied ego and the God image, the greater self. She wants to translate his collected works on psychology into Hindi.
Yeah, because like I said, you could, if you see the principles of communism or socialism, capitalism, whatever name has those economy systems, they are full of good intentions, but once that is in practice, then if the people doesn't control the ego, they will want everything for them. So in community and in projects like this, I think it's very important to educate ourselves, and we should have some kind of disciplines to understand that we belong to the planet Earth and to the human family, and we are living collectively. Because if you just promise to the people that there will be food for everybody, maybe we will have here a lot of lazy people trying to take advantage of the program. And we don't want that. We want people that is consciousness about that we should find better systems to survive, because we are just one family, the human family, and we should resolve the problems that we are living, and it's not taking us to good places to have a nice life, but depends on how we educate ourselves. We have a lot of barriers that we need to take off: the color of the skins, the religions, the social levels, the sexism, a lot of barriers that doesn't allow us to live each other in peaceful way. And that's what I mean. We should have some system to educate ourselves. That's why I was telling Jamin, that we should find some ways to do that. And I was telling him about there is a net that is called the Universal Great Sisterhood, Brotherhood, that they give you tools to work in yourself, like martial arts, yoga, meditation, vegetarianism, stuff like that. Tools in order that the people know themselves. So they should go like to that filter. Then if the people really is conscious that we should work together, I think this project will be very successful. But as long as we don't control the ego, some people are gonna come here just to take advantage. That's what I think. And thank you to let me express my thoughts.
Just thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, sir. I just want to add here that ego and trauma, like there's ego and then there's a trauma. So I will add another layer of it on, because everything that, how do I explain, everything that ego does, trauma does the same thing, but it's other way around. Yeah, and both are, but both are equally damaging. And the ego, I think for professionals, it feels like they might be able to understand play of ego very easily rather than play of trauma. That's my interpretation to this. Yeah.
Yeah. And these are these can be tricky things to to sort out. And what Jorge was alluding to is, hey, if we feed everyone, then maybe a bunch of people will get lazy and not do anything. That's ego and trauma, playing out in a certain way. There's a fair amount of complexity here, right? And that's precisely why we need to bring collective intelligence to it, so that we can pick apart the complexity. And how do we feed everyone in such a way that it is a net positive and not a net negative, right? Again, at 11 o'clock in 2.5 hours, we will be delving into the details of a very specific proposal for how we can feed everyone in a way that it is totally positive and in fact incredibly positive across multiple dimensions. So we'll get to that. But for the moment, just imagine that we've fed everyone, everyone's nourished, we're all sitting at the same table collectively, and we're all talking to each other through a vast network of millions of conversations like this one, but spanning all different topics. Once we get to that state, right, where humanity is basically taken care of, then we can come together and say, okay, now that we're taken care of, now that we have our basic needs met, now that everyone is eating, right, let's work together to cool the planet, to lower the temperature of the planet. And there are very specific ways to do that. They all involve one form or another of mirrors reflecting sunlight back into space. But we need to do this at a planetary scale, where there are literally millions of square kilometers of reflectivity, of mirrors reflecting sunlight back into space. But to do that, for humanity to organize itself to do that and say, yes, we're going to do this, and all countries are going to participate, and here's how we're going to do it, I believe we need to be working from a foundation where humanity herself is cared for. Humanity herself is taken care of. Where we're feeding. Yeah.
I feel very, I get the feeling where you're coming from, but I will add another layer to it, that sure, humanity is but we got to own the planet, I think, because we got to also make sure that all the whales are fed properly, all the polar bears are fed properly, all the deers are fed properly, and if we find dinosaur, we'll feed them also properly. Yeah.
That's Yoda, by the way, in the background. The dog is Yoda. Kushbu is in India. This is my partner,
Hi.
Melissa.
Hello.
Melissa.
Good morning. Hola, Jorge, Miles.
Hi, Melissa. Nice to see you.
Sí,
Gusto, Melissa.
gracias.
All right. And Jorge has his hand up. Go ahead, Jorge.
Yes, what I was going to tell you, in order to cool down the planet, we know one of the problems that this overheat of the planet is the way the people eat. Because the meat industry is bringing us a lot of problems. That's what I mean. We need to educate ourselves and transform ourselves. And it's going to be very hard to make the whole world vegetarian, but that's the way where we are going to. We need to be vegetarians, and we need to respect the life of our brothers, the irrational animals. So it's going to be really hard to educate the people to achieve that goal. And it's a long process, but the humanity is going in that direction. Here in California, there is a lot of vegetarians already, and I hope it keep growing, because in that way we could do something for our planet. Thank you.
Yeah. There are a whole bunch of transformations that urgently need to happen. And in fact, the solution that we're working on to feed everyone is feeding them all, not just vegetarian, but vegan, right? So entirely plant-based. So that would solve both those problems simultaneously. Feed everyone, go plant-based, get off of meat and dairy. And then there's a third thing that would benefit, which is it would end pandemics. It would end these diseases spreading, because food would get to everyone, to every household, to every neighborhood, to every farm, right? So that, yes, go ahead, Kushbu.
This is so in India. I have been mentioning this to our other group like so many times. So in Western, like in India, you only give fresh food, fresh veg food to God. Like you offer them food before everybody else. Feed, and to God you only offer freshly cooked food. As simple as that. So when people when Miles will know it. So when Skip showed his famous curry video, and in the end you can feed the 4 people, family of 4 for 7 days. And I was like, oh my God, they don't consider themselves as God at all. Like because anything frozen you cannot give it to God. So it just struck me that how much food is gonna, because if we don't do it, we are gonna go extinct. And other cultures already, we don't have to like identify new solutions. Again, I'm coming back to the we know the solution. Other cultures already have it. It's just that we have to know each other enough to be able to take those things in from each other.
Kushbu, so I think just for everybody listening, you're referring to Skip Conover and his Carl Jung Depth Psychology Reading Group YouTube channel, and he has a video where he makes vegetarian or vegan food. And did you say that in that video that he has on his channel, there's enough food in his pot to feed 7 people for a week, or what did you say?
In the end, there is one end note that this the quantity of this food can feed a family for like a family of 4 for 7 days. And I'm like entire light bulb moment. Why you will eat the same curry for 7 days? it's it's a shocking thing in Indian culture. Everybody is like, why? What happened? There's a famine
So
somewhere.
he made such a big batch. He had enough to feed of curry to feed a family of 4 for 7 days. And you say that is just really not the way to do it. You shouldn't be making such a big batch of curry.
Yeah, you make the curry, just don't make it for 7 days.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, in summary, there's an abundance of food, and this is if we want to. And this is what Dr. Rao, you'll want to stay for Dr. Rao as well, Khushbu, and Dr. Naik, because they will explain in great detail how there is no shortage of good, healthy food if we want to be intelligent.
All right, Melissa, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just catching the sort of midstream of your conversation. And what's really blatantly clear is that different cultures practice different things. And we have different belief systems set up. We have different ways of treating food. I grew up in Europe where we didn't buy food for a whole week. We bought enough food for the evening, and we didn't go to the grocery store with plastic bag and put things in plastic bags. We took a basket and we went to the market. And when I moved back here, there was an overabundance of food. And in America, people go to Costco and they buy in bulk. So it's a very different culture. And there's a lot of waste here. But what I find interesting about the times we're living through right now is that it's creating a level playing field for all of humanity around the world. Like we're all facing something that is the same thing, and that's asking us to really look at how we've been living, how we treat the planet, how we consume, and the impact or the effects of our lifestyles on the planet. And so I think this conversation is possible now that we're having about how do we feed everyone and how do we change the system we've been living by, which has been one pretty much globally, even though our traditions and cultures can be different from country to country. But how do we slow down and live differently so that we're having a different impact on the planet, which is not one of harm. It's one where we become caregivers, caretakers of the planet and of each other. And we are healing. So we're healing personally, individually, collectively, and we're healing how we live on the planet, which inevitably will heal the planet and not destroy animals, wildlife, ecosystem. And I also believe that the way forward is through plant-based diet. We have to give up the meat. Interestingly, the virus has impacted the meat packing industry in the US. And they're shutting down poultry farms left, right, and center, which I find very ironic. You know, why did it affect that sector so strongly? And for me, it's just a message loud and clear. It's saying we cannot continue living this lifestyle. We cannot continue sacrificing our brothers and sisters for our tummies. That has to change. Thank you.
God has a different
Yeah.
way to make us understand certain things, I think.
It's also that way here in Canada too. In fact, where I live, there's a big meat packing plant just south of me. And there's a big meat packing, well, let's call them slaughterhouses, slaughterhouse to the east of me. And these are the leading sources of infections of the, we say Dos Equis Cuspo, we say Dos Equis because we had an issue with being shut down because we were talking about the situation. So when I say Dos Equis, we're talking about the virus. So anyway, yeah, it's the same here, and it's just terrible that it's terrible that it's industrial animal abuse to begin with, but it's also human abuse because the governments are trying to keep people going back to these terrible working conditions where it's terrible to begin with, but now they're being forced to stand close to each other and they're getting the virus spread. And why these things are not shut down for health reasons is terrible. They need to be shut down, just like the airplanes have been shut down because you can't have people that close on an airplane. Neither should you have people that close on any sort of a assembly line or factory.
All righty. Well, it's 8:38 a.m. Pacific time. In 22 minutes, we'll start the Divine Feminine. And I'm thinking maybe 7 to 10 minutes, maybe at like 1:45, we can take a break because we'll have been going for almost 3 hours. So take a break for 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to kind of reset the room here. But that'll be in a few minutes. And then we'll pause.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Just, are we okay to say virus? We're not on YouTube anymore. Well,
that's right. Yeah, no, it's okay to say virus. I mean, because the virus has the name of a popular Mexican beer, we just use the name of another Mexican beer, Dos Equis, as kind of the code name. But anyway, it's probably best not to say virus, just because, you know, better to say pandemic and Dos Equis and all that anyway. But getting back to the collective intelligence, so we have these major things that we want to accomplish. Feed everyone, boost people's immune systems, go vegan, stop pandemics, get humanity united together so that we can do these other big projects that we need to do, like cooling the planet, feeding the wildlife that's hungry, et cetera, et cetera. And the way to do all this that we are promoting and developing here is by convening a planetary collective intelligence. And we have a specific vision for that, which is a vast network of conversations just like this one, happening on all different topics. And each conversation is recorded, transcribed into text. Those transcripts are indexed, like what Google does, so that they're made searchable, so that you can search for very specific, very, very specific conversations and find them and then join those conversations. And so the vision is this vast network of conversations where it's very easy for people to jump from conversation to conversation. To what end? What's the goal of all this? The goal is that there are a whole bunch of solutions which humanity urgently needs to co-create. Food delivery, solar radiation management, refreezing the Arctic, transforming our food networks, transforming our governance et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So many things that urgently need to be transformed. And so we speak very generically in terms of solutions, everything from very big planetary solutions all the way down to very small local solutions in a given neighborhood or region, okay? And each of these solutions, in turn, is broken down into components, right? Think of the solution that a modern automobile is, right? That's one solution. You go to the dealership, you get a car, you're off and running. Well, each automobile consists of a number of major systems. You've got the chassis, you've got the electric harness, you've got the engine, you've got the powertrain, you've got the body, you've got the brakes, you got the steering. So there's all these major systems. Each of these systems has many subsystems, and each subsystem has many components, and each component has many parts. So you could think of it as a big upside down tree, right? And for those of us familiar with manufacturing and assembly and all that, we call this a bill of materials explosion. We literally call it an explosion, because you start with the car, it's almost like you blow it up and break it down into its different parts. Well, similarly, for any solution that we're going to develop and implement in the world, big or small, we need to break it down into its parts, and those parts need to be designed, okay? And then they need to be integrated. All this calls for massive coordination, right? And what we're basically talking about is, instead of having like a big General Motors or Ford Motor Company, where all these hundreds of thousands of people are employed and they all work together to build these cars, here what we're talking about is an open source, not a corporation, but an open source planetary community where anyone can join any team, any meeting they want. And it's essentially, it becomes kind of like a big game where you have billions of people all trying to find those meetings where they can add the most value, where they can contribute their best ideas and their best experience, right? So that we make good solutions and not bad solutions, right? That's the basic idea.
But isn't a solution?
So I just wanted to add something here. There is a book called Indian Home Rule, which was written by Mahatma Gandhi. And all the subjects which we are talking about, he has, even before starting Indian freedom fight, he with his experience in Africa, he wrote this book. And all the concepts which we are talking about, so the DIY or the open source localized network, that topic is also there. Localized manufacturing and collective care of food, and becoming a owner in earth, becoming owner in earth, where we, like, it's more like a husbandary relationship with the planet. Like humanity have a husbandary relationship with the planet. And in that, everything which you talk about, all the topics I cover, one thing you didn't mention is dealing with malice and malevolence. That one topic is apart from that, I think everything, all the chapters which that book has, you covered. So I think you love it if you take a look.
Beautiful. Well, Dr. Sailesh Rao, who will be on at 11, hopefully sooner, he is originally from India, and he often quotes and cites Mahatma Gandhi, if I'm saying it right. And so I'm a huge fan. I remember when the movie Gandhi came out in 1982 or 83. I was living in Spain at the time, and they made fun of me at my school where I went. I went to a Spanish school, because every weekend I would go to watch the movie Gandhi, and I was just watching it so many times, and everyone's like, this guy's crazy. But anyway, so I'm a huge fan of Gandhi. So I'll tell you what, let's take a break now. In 13 minutes, we'll start the Divine Feminine. Welcome, Nolan. We're just about to take a break. In fact, Nolan, if you want to kind of hold the fort for a few minutes while we take a break, since you're nice and fresh here, go for it. Say hello to Kushbu, who's in India, Bangalore, India. And welcome back, Jorge. And I'm sure we'll have a bunch more people on in a few minutes. So Melissa and I are going to take a break. We'll go on mute. We're going to reset the room here. And we'll see you all at the top of the hour in 13 minutes, which in India, I understand, will be 30 minutes after the hour because there's a different time zone there. All right. We'll see you all in 13 minutes. We'll see you at the top of the hour in a few minutes. Thanks, everybody. See you shortly. And Nolan, I'm going to make you co-host so you can let people in or whatever as you need. Okay. Good. Okay. We'll be back. See you in a few.